County City Council for November 8th, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozowski,
Here.
Mrs. Lightford,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
Mr. Prokowski,
Present.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Here.
Fire Inspector, Mr. Williams.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
and to
the
the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We move on to approval of the meeting minutes for October 25th, 2021. Are there any alterations or corrections? No, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro.
I'll second that.
Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for October 25th have been approved. We do have an awards presentation tonight, and with us in chambers is Dylan Stewart, our Spartan of the Month. Dylan, if you'd like to come forward.
Have your principal come up too.
You're right.
Mr. Conti, you read the script in the record, please.
Spartan of the month for October is Dylan Stewart. Dylan is a 12th grade student at Conneaut High School. His nominating principal, Ms. Stephanie Ann Servitz, wrote, Dylan is a member of the soccer team, the Daily Scoop Media Production class, and has recently become involved with the school's PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Supports team. Along with two fellow senior students, Dylan has spearheaded the formation of a movement at Conneaut High School known as, quote, the Social Project. The goal of this movement is to provide peer support for students who want to talk, need help, or just want to make connections and feel a part of something in school. Dylan wanted an opportunity for all students to be involved in something, even if they are not athletes or musicians, or may be reluctant to try something new. Dylan sees the good in everyone and wants students to feel connected to each other. His work on this project shows his true character and concern for others, and he is a shining example of what it means to be a Spartan. Son Council President John Arcaro and Council Member Thomas Kozowski.
Recognition of first Spartan of the month is Summit Council. Congratulations.
Introduce who you have here. And who else? Congratulations once again.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, next up is citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments? Okay, communications.
I have one this evening from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. It's a notice to the legislative authority of an application for a permit for a C1 and C2 permit classes for R&E Growth Properties LLC, 988 Harbor Street, Conneaut.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any communications? Okay, move on to reports of the administration and begin with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. Couple quick updates. We've had lots of questions about it, so I want to make sure. So Nichelle was able to get me this information earlier today. Booster vaccines, which are now available to anybody that would like them. She's going to be holding a walk-in clinic at the Conneaut Health Department this Friday, November 12th. from 8:30 in the morning to 11:30 in the morning. It's on a walk-in basis. You must bring proof of your card, your vaccination card. And it has to be 6 months since you're fully vaccinated. So that can be a little confusing. 6 months since you're fully vaccinated. If you're in one of the original 2 shots, either the Pfizer or the Moderna, which requires 2 shots, it has to be 6 months since your second shot. If you received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 1 shot, and that's fully vaccinated. So bring your vaccination card. If you have lost your vaccination card and you don't know where it is, then you can still come in, but they may take a few minutes to look you up in the state's system that tracks vaccination status. So, if you have any questions, I'd really encourage you to reach out to the Conneaut Health Department. Call ahead if you do have questions. They're going to do this on a walk-in basis. We don't know what our demand will be like. If demand for booster shots gets to a point, we may reactivate kind of our Station 3 model that we had if we need to start doing them over there. It does not matter which vaccine that you had previously. They are using the Moderna as the booster. If you don't want that, there are some other pharmacies in towns authorizing the booster. Gertie's Pharmacy and a few of the others in town are also doing booster vaccines, and you can contact them if you're looking for a specific type, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna. So just wanted to put that out there. They have started doing some registrations for children, I believe, through the schools. They had about 30 in their first initial clinic, but that's all they had space for. They're going to be reauthorizing those for children's 5 to 12. So that has been rolling out as well. So I'll get you information if they're going to do additional clinics of that, and they're going to have open slots for children. And if they end up having a huge demand for the adult boosters, then I think we're going to try and retool and maybe do the Station 3 if there's large demand over there. But that's the first one, 8:30 to 11:30 this Friday, November 12th. A couple other things. I went to our monthly Asheville County Convention Visitors Bureau meeting. One of the things that I want to share is their bed tax this year has been tremendous. And it's really across the board, over a 20% increase over 2019 revenues, which is large. Our typical year-to-year increase in Asheville County is usually in that 5 to 7 range year over year, and has been that way for about the last decade. Obviously, 2020, we saw an abrupt cliff because of the pandemic and wide-scale closures. So, but in 2021, they've rebounded significantly. They're up about 50% over 2020 and about 20% over 2019 revenues. I'd be kind of interested, John, if we could see a report at some point of what that looks like in Conneaut, if any of that trickled down to Conneaut and its lodging. But all in all, it's been a very solid year for them. They've been able to bring on some staff and do some additional things. I believe they're doing their visitors guide in-house this year. So all in all, some fairly positive stuff from the visitors community. I think if you're able to attend the chamber luncheon, member luncheon on the 18th, we're going to talk about some of the things that the County Visitors Bureau has been doing here in Conneaut. So you can look forward to that if you're going to be attending. So we also did receive the 221 building RFP interviews. Council President Arcaro participated in those, along with the courts, the Conneaut Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce, and Community Counseling. We're all in attendance for those building interviews to discuss some of the RFP responses from two of the companies that responded to it. We'll cover that at our next work session. I'll transmit those packets so everybody can take a look at it, start looking through it. But I'm really waiting on Bill Gallagher from CT. He's going to write a summary of everything up for you and share all that information with you. So once we get through that, and once I receive that from Mr. Gallagher at CT, I'll be passing it along to council for their review. Conneaut Creek dredge material facility. I'm still waiting on final design. I was kind of hoping to have it by Friday of this last week, so I'm sure I'll get it early this week. And then there's some final kind of check the box environmental stuff, some of their wetland pieces and a couple other small permit pieces that they're gathering on that, and that should be ready to bid. Once we have all the pieces and you've had an opportunity to review them, we're going to bring CT in, probably spend a good portion of a meeting just on that project alone. But at this point, it is getting very close for council presentation. Route 20 Waterline Phase 2, they've done everything they can do until we have the folks from Merchant Gaffney off the roadway. Once it's opened up to both ways, we can deploy that and do the rest of our directional boring that we need to do for that project to close that out. I don't have a timeline on that because we'll wait on ODOT's contractor and Merchant Gaffney to clear. So right now they did their slip curbing. They have a little bit of concrete work. They were still working on that today. They anticipate the curbing and catch basin work to go tomorrow and Wednesday, and the paving contractor Burton Scott is going to be coming in on Thursday of this week, and they anticipate a total of 3 days of paving on that. Now, as far as a reopen schedule, I've asked them for that, but you know, they're not going to stick a pin on the calendar for me just yet. We're going to see what the weather holds. But I'm hoping if everything goes smoothly and they're starting on Thursday, that they'd be done and maybe early next week we'd be reopened on Route 20 in both directions. So, but ODOT has not given me that official date on reopening. So that's where we stand. I talk to them literally every day, asking when they're going to be done, when's this being done. So hopefully we are nearing the end on that. Chestnut Street, Stormwater Phase 3, that is paved and complete. They do have a little grass seeding, some little berm work stuff to do, but the asphalt and the roadway and everything is completed and ready to rock and roll there. So we're really in project closeout through the end of this month. We'll get all the final billing and all the tallies and totals. And once I have all that, I'll share that with council. I do think we did come in under budget on this overall. You know, so you know, it happened. I can't say we didn't have setbacks or challenges on it, but we're at the end of it now, and it's moving forward. Water treatment plant filtration improvements. It is technically under construction. I know they're waiting on parts and pieces and submittals on all the various pumps, motors, drives, under drain material. This is going to be a long project. It's going to take approximately a year to complete. So I'll keep you updated at major milestones on that piece. I did want to let you know, again, I always have it italicized there that it's not a city project, but the NNS Railroad Bridge Replacement Project, that project did sell for Norfolk and Southern. Their contractor did reach out this last week asking about the access agreement. I did convey to them the access agreement that was furnished to NNS in July of this year when they were pre-bidding it. So once they've had a chance to review that, it'll come back. Council will be required to pass an ordinance with that access agreement for them to use Old Main to access their construction site. So our terms and conditions have already been laid out for them, and we'll see if the contractor is going to come back and with any questions or concerns. But as soon as they do, I'll be bringing that back before council. You know, again, it's water main break season. We had a pretty decent one here downtown. You know, there's a couple of road patches, a little bit of a mess on Thursday when they finished it. So they came back on Friday, cleaned up downtown, got it reopened. I'm hoping here either this week or next week, we'll have that permanently patched. So we have a couple more rounds of permanent road patch repairs that we're going to be doing with Public Works and crews over this week and next week. So as weather and time permits. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
I just want to throw out that I heard from a couple people how impressed they were with how hard the guys were working down there on that water main and how long they worked on it through that. So I just wanted to let you know that I did get some feedback on that, and if you could pass it along, they were impressed with how hard they were working.
Well, the biggest part is they did it without shutting it down. And that always makes it for a much more difficult work site condition when the water's still running. And we do that with the intent that if we do a shutdown, then we have to do a boil advisory. So we try not to do it with any boil advisory, so nobody loses service or loses that opportunity to be open. But it definitely makes it for messier and worse site conditions to work in. And that's a 10-inch line, and it was a 1-inch steel tap sleeve that had rotted out. It's actually not that old of a line. It's plastic. So, but the tap sleeve was just completely gone on it. So then they had to cobble some parts together because, as I'm sure I've told you many times, 2021 has made it difficult to get all kinds of parts. A lot of the tapping sleeves and stuff like that are difficult for us to get at this point. Water meters, tapping sleeves, valve parts have excessive lead times.
So is Chestnut Street fully open traffic then?
I didn't drive across it today, but I believe if it's not open today, then it'll be open tomorrow.
Okay.
But the road work is all complete. It's drivable.
Any other questions for the city manager?
I have one, Mr. Arcaro. So ODOT can't give us an estimated completion date on the west side? Just a hunch?
The reason they won't commit is because if it rains and they have to scoot a paved day because of rain, then it'll fall back to the successive day. So that's not atypical.
Right.
So
Okay. But the intent is to have it completed.
the intent
Which
is
is-
Thursday they're paving and it'll take 3 days to pave. So if they're able to pave the 3 successive days in a row,
Right.
then I'm hoping early next week we'll be able to open it to two-way traffic.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, if now we'll move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. First of all, I emailed this report back to budgetary. If you have any questions, we have to answer them. At our last work session, we had some discussion about the street department budget woes. I thought it might be a good idea just to summarize the debt in this one. And it doesn't include all the debt, but I tried to include some of the major debt issues. I tried to break it out under infrastructure and equipment. If you look at the infrastructure, those are the newest and largest debt issues for that department. We have for infrastructure, Paris Chamberlain, about a little over 800,000. Route 7 to 531 paving, almost 400,000. Route 20 East paving, 190,000. Lake Road Storm Sewer, 132. Chestnut Street Storm Sewer, 103. Route 20 West Engineering, 420,000. Route 20 West paving, 498,000. So we've added close to 2.6 million in debt just over the past year and a half, 2 years. The current debt principal is about 2.5 million, so we really haven't paid that much off. The annual debt service, really what I'm more concerned about is 291,000, almost 292. Interest over all those years for all those debt issues is about 421,000. The only bright spot here is that the rates were pretty low. They're 3% through SIB. You see the 2.2 on the bottom. Those are from Huntington, which was actually a better rate. There is a variable payment. I've attached all the amortization schedules for each of the infrastructure debt issues if you want to see those. But I put variable payment because they aren't a straight amortization. The principal and interest are a little bit varied. So I just tried to use what the average would be as the annual debt service, and it's pretty close for those two, 47,000 for the Route 20 West Engineering. So, excuse me, if you look at the equipment, we have two large ones there, the front end loader and the tandem. It's about 358,000. We paid off about 123 of that, which leaves about 277. So the tandem truck trailer was a little bit higher because that was issued in 2019. Rates have actually dropped since then to the 2.4, 2.2 range. Right below that blue line is the gas tax revenue. We talked about this a number of times. Prior to the increase in the 10.5 cent per gallon for the gas and 19 cents per gallon for the diesel, we were collecting about 393,000 for gas tax. Now 92.5% of that is received into the street department, 7.5% goes into the state highway maintenance fund. Well, the projections that we had from the state where we were going to collect 640,000 or about a $246,000 increase in gas tax. We have not quite reached that estimate. I mean, COVID hit and we started to collect quite a bit more than we had previously. But once COVID hit, gas consumption obviously went down, gas tax revenue went down. So what I did is I just took the infrastructure, it doesn't include the equipment, but just the infrastructure, the annual debt service of 291,000, less what we anticipated collecting, not what we're actually collecting, but what we anticipated in collecting in additional revenue. We're already at a deficit of $45,509 just because of this debt. So originally, as I said before, when the gas tax was increased and we were projecting these increases, I was happy. I thought, well, we'll have some additional funding for equipment, personnel. And as you can see, not only has it absorbed all of that, but there's an additional strain on that street department budget of 45,000 just for those infrastructure debts. So as I said, if you want to look at the amortization schedules, I've included them. Attached to that, paperclip to that, is the detailed revenue transactions for gas tax. Now, I kind of summarized it. It's broken up between street department fund 211 and 213. As I said, 211 has 92.5% of that gas tax received into that fund. 213 is the 7.5%. But I tried to summarize it by month. In order to meet that estimate of 640,000, we need to collect on average 53,000 per month. Right now, our year-to-date average is 48,000. So we're 5,000 a month short, or about 60,000 per year is what we're short. Now, the beginning of the year, it started out a little bit slower. It's about 45,000 in January, February, about 48, 46 in March. April, for whatever reason, it was dramatically lower. And then it started inching back up. And we started collecting about between 51 and 52,000 per month. And that's closer to where we need to be. But for the year, we're still going to be short. And I had already estimated the lower tax collection of 621,000 based upon what we have right now. If you look at the last page, is the summary. The estimated revenue is 621. I dropped it about 20,000 from that 640 because I didn't think we were going to collect that much. We're probably going to collect even less than that. So if we hit the 600,000 mark, I think we'll be lucky. If you look at the unencumbered balance, that's just the amount that needs to be collected in order to meet the estimate. That's 137,000. We'll probably collect about another 100, so we'll be that 37 short on that unencumbered balance. And then, as I said, I emailed the reports, including fund statements. So the Public Works Department is probably about a $2.8 million operation if you include, the highway maintenance, cemeteries, the parks, the street paving. But just the street fund alone is about 2.2 million. Right now, they have about a $4,000 carryover for a $2.2 million fund. And it's pretty pathetic. It's been that way for a long time. I think I was talking to Mr. Mosio about the staff reductions. I went back and I'll print that out for council at a later date. But just in the street department, since the year 2000, we've dropped 10 positions in the street department, and that's over half the department, just because of the funding here. I have a $40,000 budgeted transfer into the street maintenance. I think we're probably gonna have to use that this year. We may have to transfer more cash. It just depends on some of the other collections. So we talked a little bit about the income tax, how it has rebounded from the prior year, but it's not to where its pre-COVID highs were. So we're still running 150, 200 short per year in collections. In income tax, we're, collecting pre-COVID 3.2, 3.3 million per year. So about 17% of that is receiving into the Public Works Department. As I said, you can adjust that 1% as we talked about at the meeting. Any type of increase, potential increase, we can reallocate specifically to this department if you so choose. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for finance director? Okay, thank you. Move on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you in first reading tonight are 4 ordinances. 96, 97, 98, and 99. These all pretty much come together, so all should be passed and none of them passed. And there's no hurry to pass anything at this point. Planning Commission has been working on zoning issues regarding bed and breakfast and short-term rentals and farm animals and poultry and a number of things that have been nagging city code enforcement for quite some time. This shouldn't be seen as a final draft. I think they see it as more of a working draft if they wanted to present to you, have you review it and ask questions and provide them input. Ideally, might be appropriate for you to spend an hour or so with them at a work session to go over some of these items so we can get their input and why they felt things should be in there, the way they are. At a certain point, we can tweak it some more if that's what's necessary. And I'm sure there are some tweaks that are necessary. And then if we go up for a public meeting or public hearing, excuse me, it goes back to Planning Commission at that point. They have to formally approve it. This has not been formally approved because it wasn't really an ordinance when we got it. So once you're pretty much satisfied with this, we'll send it back to planning. They will review it, make whatever tweaks they want, send it back to you. We'll have a public hearing, and then you can vote on it at your leisure. The key part to this again is that this is a. It's actually, I've been very impressed with this planning commission. I've worked with a lot of them in the county, and they've worked very diligently. And, kept the ball rolling, and I think this is just one more step in that. So I would urge you to schedule a meeting with them at some point, have them go through this after you've had more of a chance to review it. To kind of summarize these 4 ordinances, like I said, they're all kind of together. And if you don't pass one, it's going to affect everything else. So these are kind of things that have to be looked at as a set. The first one is 9621. And this really provides a much needed overhaul of the conditional use permit process. If you go through your zoning code, there are permitted uses and there are conditional uses. And the conditional use sections, I think we saw 6 pages of single space, ordinance that really had no business being in there because it applied to a wide variety of things. And so we're trying to restructure this. And with any legislation, this is a work in progress, and you take it in bites and steps. The Board of Zoning Appeals will be hearing the conditional uses. I don't think that was specified. There's a section, this is on page 2 of that ordinance where you can revoke conditional use permits if certain criteria happen. That's something that should be in here and was never in there, so that adds some flexibility and some enforcement mechanism. It makes it clear here that there are general standards applicable to all conditional uses. Some of those might be, it can't create a nuisance, it can't create undue noise, it can't have, fire hazards, other chemical type hazards. Yeah, and that applies to anything. In addition, we've carved out several sections that apply to specific things. And this can be expanded and should be expanded at some point. But for now, it's the B&Bs and short-term rentals. These have conditional uses that are specific just to those. One of them might be, one parking space for every room. And it should be off-street parking, not something that's going to clog up some of the streets that are narrower. Additionally, those criteria for bed and breakfast and short-term rentals are found on the bottom of page 5. And those are important, and you can add or subtract those and modify them as you wish. Part of the inspection process is having the fire department come through once a year and determine that there's compliance with the state fire code. We want to maintain safety, of course. The next section that has specific criteria is farm animals. We have different requests coming in for someone that might have 5 acres and has a horse and wants to have a horse on the property. Well, these sections address properties that can have a horse, which are generally something I think over 5 acres, and those that probably shouldn't have a horse. There's also one in here, I think, on it's in here on poultry, and having how many chickens, and it depends on your zoning designation. I'll cover that in a minute or two here. So that's the first ordinance. The second one is 97, and you'll notice that all of the additions or corrections are underlined or struck through, and everything else is existing language. So in this one, most of this is existing language. There's nothing to look at here. Until you get to page 2, where it defines a bed and breakfast, which means a single family dwelling, which is a residence occupied by the owner or designated employee that offers sleeping accommodations in 4 or fewer rooms as transient lodging, and 1 meal is provided for compensation, and that's usually breakfast. A lot of these we pulled out of other municipalities. I think Vermillion was one. I can't think of some of the others off the top of my head, but there were 3 or 4 that the group looked at and tried to cobble together something that would be more suitable for county. On page 4 is the definition for farm animals. And basically this is not going to be in your residential areas unless there's substantial acreage. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's 5 acres. It seems to be the dividing line. And on page 8 is the definition for poultry, which includes chickens, turkeys, waterfowl, and game birds. I believe that they're prohibiting roosters, except maybe in the most rural areas. And there's a definition for a short-term rental on page 9. Otherwise, everything stays the same for the definitions. 98 and 99 govern residential and non-residential districts. The non-residential districts start off with 98. And what to look at here is changes for principally permitted uses and conditionally permitted uses. So short-term rentals, B&Bs, and farm animals with more than 5 acres are permitted. And conditional permitted uses might be farm animals that are less than 5 acres. So they would have to show that, you know, it might be a small animal. They'd have to show that it doesn't create a nuisance, doesn't create undue odors or smell or noise or that type of thing. And so that sets out the next page is for coastal business districts. Again, add short-term rentals, bed and breakfast, farm animals as principal permitted uses, and defines as condition permitted uses farm animals. Again, the idea is to have some flexibility so that if you're in a residential area, it might be, you know, in Broad Street, that's going to be a different residential area than someplace that's south of 90. So you may want to allow, you want to have flexibility for people to use their property as they see fit, provided that they don't impinge on the rights of neighbors and others. 99 is for the residential zoning districts. And it's the same thing here. There as well with defining, so it's a conditional use permit and it's a permitted use permit. So that's kind of a synopsis of it. It's a lot to go over, it's a lot to digest. I'm looking at and finding areas that probably need to be tweaked also. This is something that it's a project, it's not something that has to be done immediately. Again, I give a lot of credit to the members of the planning commission for the effort that they've made trying to create this and come up with something that's an appellate system, which is more than what was there before. That's all I have.
So their action could be to table this so they can review it?
Yes,
Okay.
table it, review it, schedule a meeting with planning, and go through it page by page. It may take more than
The
one
only other
work session.
thing is, we did receive some comments from council last week when they were emailed out. And I know you were traveling last week, but the two questions that came up was a question of short-term rental versus transient versus something that would be a seasonal long rental. In other words, they'd rent for the entire summer season. And would that definition of short-term rental apply to that? Not expecting you to answer it. I don't think it does generally.
No, it wouldn't. And part of the thing you got to keep running against here is we also have the residential rental program. And my recollection is that the residential rental program is anything over 30 days. So if there's a seasonal type rental that's out there, it goes from, say, May until June, or excuse me, May until September. For someone rents it for that long a period of time, not just for 5 days here, 5 days there, but you know, the whole season, that would fall under your residential inspection code.
And I believe the other question that circulated was a question of if somebody already had a rooster, would this technically grandfather any pre-existing?
Yes, we're not going to make someone kill their rooster.
No, those same roosters could potentially in a residential area be subject to nuisance complaints if they're crowing all hours of days and nights, like a barking dog, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it could go into that type of thing. And then there's just some, I mean, every night there's some train that goes by at 11:05 that I hear where I live every night, and that creates more disturbance for me than the dog that barks across the street occasionally. So one person's love is someone else's dislike, I guess. So,
My only comment on the short-term rental is I think we ought to tie that back to also and or mean the transient definition that's established in the tax section of the code.
that's fine, yeah.
The 30 days or less, because that's the Ohio Revised Code request for bed tax generation. I just think we need to single in on that.
Yeah, one of the things that, we talked about initially was a much broader rental program or a D&D ordinance. And in terms of not only having zoned properly for it, but then having licenses procured every year from city manager's office or from some city official. And it was kind of decided that we're going to take this in pieces. How do you eat a 800-pound elephant one piece at a time? And I think the idea was, let's get the zoning part of this down first. We can get some of the regulation stuff in. We need to, of course, tie it into the bed tax. So there's a multi-step process in here. And again, I give the planning commission a lot of credit because this took an enormous amount of time on their part. And these are volunteers. And the people that were part of this, met, I'm going to say for 18 months, going through some of this stuff and arguing it out. And again, they're not asking that you defer to them, I don't think. I think what they're suggesting is, here's what we came up with. We want another set of eyes looking at this. Is this the right track? Are we there? Do we need to come back and do some more? That's the kind of feedback I think they're looking for.
Well, personally, I think this looks really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what everyone else is thinking, but I didn't come up with a lot of questions. I know Mr. Arcaro had a couple where I'm like, oh yeah, that, should answer those and stuff, but looking at this from the outside in, I think it solves a lot of the issues that we're talking about. So
But it'll solve a set of them and then a whole new set will come up.
I don't know.
And again, I apologize for not being available last week. I had to go back west for some things. So. Appreciate your patience.
Kyle, coastal business district, you have private clubs, that include bars?
That is probably something that's an existing zoning, so that's not a change here.
What's this principal permitted uses?
Right, but unless it's underlined, I don't
It's
think
not
it
underlined.
is. They don't think they address private bars.
Private clubs, bars, that's already there.
Yeah, that's already there.
And where? I don't see it.
I'm sorry, I thought you were reading something about private bars.
No, coastal business district, B4. Section 1121.04,
Wait a minute, let me look at it here.
principal permitted uses.
Yeah, okay, so
The question is, private clubs, that include private bars? Bar owner,
yes, and it very well might. I haven't looked at it, but
Gotcha. Okay,
that's not part of the changes.
no,
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that's not something you looked at. That's not
I just had a
something-
question when I looked at that. The changes, yeah, are highlighted there, the short-term bed and breakfast farm animals. But
And in that regard, and I was hearing that funding is tight, but I really have to commend the planning and zoning department, particularly in the last several months. There's been a dramatic change in the caseload they're dealing with. The promptness they're getting things to my office for prosecution or civil stuff. It's been a very good investment, I think, for the city. I support Molly and Jen, I can't think of her name, her last name, but Jen McConnell. This is one of the best zoning and planning departments I've seen here in Conneaut. They're really doing good work.
Any other questions or comments for the library? Okay, so there's a lot to digest there, and obviously, we'll look at it down the road at a work session for sure. Okay, moving on to our reports of any committees. Hearing none, liaison reports.
I have one this evening, Mr. Arcaro. I attended the Conneaut Cable Advisory Board meeting October 27th at noon at the library. It was a very informative meeting. They discussed the current or the budget for 2022. One thing I found very interesting is one of their major things that they're working on is this video on demand, which it'll be like a profile page. They're developing content about how much, how far they should go back, where someone could just go to it and request to see something that the Cable Advisory Board has produced. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. So it was very interesting. One great thing that I'd like to announce is the Cable Advisory Board got this congratulations and an award from the Ohio School Boards Association. And I'll take a moment to read it. It says, congratulations being named to the 2021 OSBA Business Honor Roll. With the certificate of recognition, the Ohio School Boards Association offers its sincere thanks to the Conneaut Cable Access Television for its strong support of Conneaut area city schools. The Board of Education, students, staff, and community also extend their appreciation. School business partnerships greatly benefit all involved. Local businesses play a crucial role in supporting their communities, schools, while students get great real-world experience. This support is especially important as school districts struggle with limited resources. Just as business support their schools, it's equally important for schools and communities support their local merchants and service providers. OSBA encourages everyone in the community to recognize Conneaut Cable Access Television's outstanding contribution to the Conneaut area city schools. Sincerely, Scott E. Huddle, President, OSBA. So I thought that was very nice recognition for our Cable Advisory Board. So I wanted to share that tonight.
Very good. Congratulations to Regis and his crew
Yes.
fighting back there. Okay, any other liaison reports? If not, we'll move on to our ordinances for this evening. We have 8820, which is on the table and remain on the table. We have 6 ordinances in first reading to consider, and we will begin with ordinance 9621.
An ordinance to amend section 1137.07 of the City of Pontiac Codified Ordinances governing procedure, general and specific criteria for conditional uses and not declaring an emergency.
You heard Mr. Smith's explanation. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to table ordinance 9621.
Okay, ordinance 9621 has been tabled.
Mr. Smith, I have a question. Are we able to table all at the same time, or do we have to do
You
them
have to go
individually?
through each one.
Individual, okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, I'm just asking the question. I didn't.
Okay, move on to ordinance 9721.
An ordinance to amend section 1103.01 definitions of the City of Pontiac Codified Ordinances and not declaring an emergency.
A motion.
I'd like to move to table ordinance 97-21.
Okay, ordinance 9721 is tabled.
I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. You'll need to vote on each motion. Excuse me.
Okay, we'll go back to ordinance 9621. Call the roll, please.
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, move on to ordinance 9721. Is there a second?
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Ordinance 9721 has been tabled. Move on to ordinance 9821.
An ordinance to amend section 1121.03 and 1121.04 of the City of Pontiac Codified Ordinances, General Business District and Coastal Business District respectively, and not declaring an emergency.
Motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Your motion was to table, correct?
Yes.
The ordinance 9821 is tabled. Move on to ordinance 9921.
An ordinance to amend chapter 1117 of the City of Pontiac Codified Ordinances governing residential zoning districts and not declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to table ordinance 99-21.
I'll second that.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9921 has been tabled. Move on to ordinance 121.
An ordinance to authorize the closing of Depot Street, Broad Street, and Main Street for the purpose of hosting the Pontiac Holiday Parade from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday, November 26, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
This is the annual Christmas parade. The Chamber of Commerce is taking it over from the Optimist Club. They did provide an insurance certificate for it, and the Pontiac Public Library chipped in to help fill out all the applications and all the paperwork, and they are leading the organization of this. So if there's somebody out there that would like to enter a float or participate in the Christmas parade, reach out to the Pontiac Public Library to do that.
Any questions or comments on this ordinance? Now is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Arcaro, I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 100-21.
There a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended. Is
Like to declare ordinance 100-21 an emergency.
there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, the emergency has been declared.
Like to make a motion to act on 100-21.
Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 121 is passed. Move on to ordinance 10121.
In order to authorize payment to the following vendors in the amounts listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 5705.41B1 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, there's a couple here and Mr. Williams can jump in whenever. Koski Construction, this was a purchase order that was closed. It was stale. It was a year old. This was on the retainage from the Chestnut Street paving project. So it got closed and did not get reissued. We do owe that amount, which is the retainage amount on that. So council will need to approve that. a couple of these, we did not have the ability to estimate costs. The engineer, it says engineering for gas line replacement. It's actually the inspection services. This is entirely pass through, so this comes into us, we pay CT, and then it's reimbursed by Dominion Energy. We may even have another one of these either at the end of this year or early next year, depending on how quickly that project wraps up. So, but it's impossible for me to estimate the amounts that we need and just encumber bigger and bigger purchase orders. So this is a better process. There's one from the O'Reilly site plan review. This came up actually when Molly came in. She took over and filled a role that had been vacant for some time. So not a purchase order that came through my office, but it was a pass through where new developers go to build something, they get billed and invoiced, but we pay CT for those plan reviews. And this one is one that has just fallen through the cracks. So we do owe that money. We did bill that money and receive it from O'Reilly's, the construction company. So that needs to be paid. The Center Road Bridge evaluation, this was from the traffic accident. This is also insurance proceeds, money recovered by the city due to that accident. Then the other one, Carrilla Contractors, this is another accident. This was the temporary signals that were hit by a semi truck out at Truck World, and those repairs that had to be made. Those costs have also been recovered, but we do need to pay the contractor. So those insurance proceeds did come in. And then I'll own the last one, the kayak launch, the ODNR PEG grant. I forgot to get CT's purchase order at the beginning of that project. So I need council to approve that. That has been bid and awarded. Part of the original budget is what I thought I got the work authorization from, but I did not. So, John, was there anything I missed in there?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add for the gas line replacement, if there are additional expenditures for that, council will need to increase the appropriation. We have the appropriation to cover these, it's just council's authorizing them after the fact. But we may have to increase the appropriation and get reimbursed through the gas company.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 101-21.
Motion is suspend the 3 reading rules. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moisia?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Ledford, the 3 reading rules been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 101-21 an emergency.
Motion to declare ordinance 101-21 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moisia?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 101-21.
There's a motion to act on 101-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moisia?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Ordinance 101-21 is passed. These are ordinances for this evening. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, miscellaneous business.
I have just one thing, Mr. Arcaro. I received a phone call this afternoon from a lady expressing her displeasure with the current trash districts, mainly because of the fact that she lost her primary trash hauler. Now she's going to have to seek another, and there's concerns about increased cost for trash hauling, pickup, and so on and so forth. So I said I would mention it tonight, and I explained our reasoning for the ordinance and how that's been working, so on and so forth. So
I know that the manager's office has gotten some issues about haulers not picking up on the correct days. Has some of that stuff been ironed out, Mr.
I
Hockaday?
think the most of it has been ironed out. I think people have fallen into the pattern.
Okay.
Fairly, limited complaints, but
I got a call last week and I know I directed them to your office, so hoping that those things have been.
I did receive a late email, which I haven't answered yet because it came in while we were here. I think the confusion is on the borders because the trash companies can't seem to figure out north and south or east and west on the borders. So they're confusing the residents on what day they're picking up, whether it be Monday for zone 1 or Wednesday for zone 3 or things like that. So hopefully these haulers can get it figured out.
I know this lady that I spoke with lives in the southern area, I want to say zone 2. And I think the concern is there other trash haulers that may say, well, I'm not going out there on this particular day, or I can't based on my route. So I understand the concerns there.
Yes, I'm aware of one company that has been doing an out of town company that has dropped
Correct.
zone 2 in our city, but they're doing the other zones.
Hmm.
So. Hey, any other miscellaneous business? Okay, if not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Craig Carroll,
Yes.
Chris Dodd,
Yes.
Susan Dunstan,
Yes.
Susan Lexer,
Yes.
Mansfield,
Yes.
Natasha.
yes.
The city council for November 8th, 2021 is adjourned. Thank you.